I get a motion to postpone this until the June meeting.
So moved.
Second. Motion by John Ed, a second by Ron Deere. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now I'd entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda as presented with the changes.
Second. Motion by John Ed, a second by Rob Henderson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Public comments. This is time where audience members and members of the public can address the council. If you wish to do so, please step forward to the podium and state your name and address. Seeing none, close the public comments. Routine matters. This is these are items on the agenda that are routine and we take all at once. Any members of the council wish to have further discussion on any of these items? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve routine matters as presented.
Second.
Motion by Rob, second by John Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Salary ordinances or salary ordinance amendments, additional appropriations, reductions and transfers. First up is the circuit court.
Evening.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Brady Kirkendall, Court Administrator.
Megan Reeser, Johnson Circuit Court.
We are here tonight. I don't entirely remember what was in the letter, so how much information we gave you, but we need an additional appropriation for the indigent legal line item. If we're gonna be short and we wanted to be ahead of the curve, we have a couple of invoices that are rather large on the jury trial that we had March.
3 weeks ago.
Totaling the quote is approximately 53,000. So if we started with those invoices, we'd at least be able to make the rest of the bills that we have every month.
This is one of those things that you really can't predict, isn't it? Yeah. So we don't know what to expect for the rest of the year.
The short version is that we had a criminal defendant that was charged with serious offense who was hearing impaired. He couldn't hear at all. He couldn't use American Sign Language either. So we had to bring in a group of interpreters that would be able to interpret for his benefit. For lack of a better way to put it, he was not educated and spoke sort of a homespun sign language. We had to track down somebody that could speak that. The person who could speak that themselves could not speak. So their interpretation had to be then interpreted to an ASL interpreter to interpret it for the benefit of the jury. The requirement also was that we had to have backup interpreters to give those folks a break. In addition to that, we had to videotape everything. Normally our trials are memorialized on an audio recording that goes up to the Court of Appeals in the event that there's an appeal for obvious reasons. We had to videotape and audio tape certain segments because many of these folks couldn't speak audibly. Probably a once in a lifetime trial. I never heard anybody have one like it, so it was unforeseen, but all of it was necessary in order to make sure that the gentleman was on trial, got a fair trial.
Motion to approve the request as presented.
Second. Motion by Rob, a second by John T. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the park non-reverting.
Hi, Megan Bowman, Superintendent. Item Well, the first one for us, number 2, is just requesting that we move that equipment lease line that was moved and added in the beginning of the year. We need to move that into 1178 instead of 1179. And that's due to, if we keep it in 1178, it will, or sorry, if we keep it in 1179, we will be in the negative.
You want to take both of them?
Yeah, we can take both of them.
And the other one is just appropriating money out of our gift fund. That plus some donations that we've received will help us finish a project in the Hoosier Horse Park.
Discussion from the council. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve item C 2 and 3, and also for the park gift fund.
Second.
Motion by John T, a second by Ron. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Statewide 911.
Keith Grant, 911 Director. Just request to appropriate into our travel and training. Commissioners asked that I look at, they approved myself and our Deputy Director to attend the National APCO Conference in August. And asked that I look at paying that out of the 1222 as opposed to the general fund. So to appropriate this. So that cost, this cost here covers airfare, hotel, and conference for both of us.
Any discussion? Entertain a motion. Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ron, a second by John T. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
County alcohol and drug.
Steve Kermode, Deputy Director of Court Services. Angela kind of outlined what we're asking for here. I know it's not normal to come in the middle of the year and ask for this. We are trying to move one of our current juvenile probation officers to a training officer for all 3 community corrections, adult and juvenile probation. Especially community corrections, the training was lacking for years. So this person will be in charge of coordinating all 3 of those departments in the training. Then we would need to replace her position at juvenile. So that's the ask. It would come out of the one of our cash funds for this year, and then we would ask that it would be in the general fund for the following year. We know that's abnormal for us to ask in the middle of the budget season, but with taking over the other department, this was a case that was really needing some attention.
How was the assessment conducted, I should say, to determine the deficiency in training, and how is this person identified then as the appropriate individual to fulfill that gap?
So there was no training at all that was really being conducted with the correctional officers specifically. So she's trained statewide in different areas of probation and then also in law enforcement. So her kind of combination of expertise in certain areas will help in that. And then she'll coordinate all that with DOC and with the Sheriff's Department to get the appropriate training and then keep track of all that for us.
So she will not be doing the training. She'll just be coordinating.
Correct. So she is currently a juvenile probation officer. So she would just be transferring roles and then we would need to replace her at juvenile.
I don't know if you all have seen the letter. It was a pretty good letter and it came out kind of late today, but it was a good letter. Haven't been involved with y'all out there the past couple of months. They're doing some good things about changing things and moving forward. So I'd be in favor of this.
Yeah, as their liaison, they did reach out and discussed it, and it's a matter of focusing in on what they feel are the priorities, and priorities was for people to be adequately trained, and there was a deficiency was noted. And I think they've done their due diligence. I support it also.
Sounds an awful lot like a couple of motions.
Well,
Can we make that formal?
now what, her salary, is that going to be the same or?
Yes, her salary would remain the same. This is for the new, this is a salary for a new employee that would come in. So kind of looking at a range currently. So we went on the high side because of you have to pay for years of experience with probation officer. We have, if we go through the process and we hire someone with less experience, then the remaining salary for the year would be lower than what the asking is.
But their salaries are set by the state, correct?
Based on years of experience.
So the person going to training, how's that going to affect? She's still going to be a probation officer?
Yes.
When does this become effective?
I would assume that it would become effective as soon as we could. The next pay is what we based it off of. And again, it depends on if it gets approved for the remainder of the year, what we're looking at time-wise.
So that, just be sure I got, so the probation officer identified to be the training coordinator at community corrections will retain probation officer status and pay grade or pay matrix.
Correct.
Okay. And then what you're asking is to hire a new probation officer to replace the coordinator who's moving
Correct.
at current matrix. And then next year, beginning with the 2023 budget, you're asking for, if I read, one of them will be coming out of the general fund next year.
Correct.
Which one is that?
Right now, we're asking that this new position be come out of one of our fee accounts. And then next year, that person would hopefully be able to go into the general fund.
The training coordinator?
The
new
officer.
probation. Okay, sorry.
So is this training coordinator, is it going to be like a part-time position? Since she's going to be doing both or?
Yeah, so she would be in charge of all that training, and then she would be part of the CIT group as well. So the crisis intervention team. For the county. And part of their responsibility is to train all first responders in the CIT program.
And to note that that's all first responders, not just, that includes Greenwood and White River Township and Bargersville and everybody that are first responders and police departments and.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Any further?
Motion to approve C6 as presented.
Second.
With the effective date of the next pay, which would be. All right.
Did you second?
Second to approve.
Okay, motion by John T, a second by Ron. I will abstain from this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
C7 is the county misdemeanor fund. That is a fund that we had inherited through community corrections. It's money that we received for our housing inmates in our jail, misdemeanors in our jail. And we believe it comes from DOC. I think former director didn't appropriate enough part-time money in that fund. So we're just asking that part-time line item increase to get us through the rest of the year. And then also the small amount difference in the FICA Social Security.
Has there been, since the transition, has there been a kind of a reconciliation of this fund and to make sure what we're receiving from DOC versus what we're invoicing is
Yes.
accurate?
I know that we've kind of been a little uncertain about this fee in the past, so
Yeah.
I believe with Amy helping us, we've kind of got a better understanding of it, what we can do with it and where it can be appropriated.
Very good.
Are you guys looking at any other grants or anything?
Yes, we just went to the commissioner this morning and asked for a $750,000 grant to help in some programming, different things that, we just filed our 2023 DOC grant for around the same amount requested in that, around that 750,000 range. So we're constantly asking. So hopefully we get some approval on some of these.
I'll motion to approve C7 as presented.
Second.
Motion from Rob, a second from John Ed. I'm going to abstain. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And then all the rest are just title changes. And I know these were some issues that the auditor's office had in the past that never got fixed with the previous administration. So we just want to ask that these be cleaned up and changed accordingly.
Is this correct, Amy? She's over shaking her head.
So it's for item 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Correct.
All these positions currently filled.
Yes.
I'll look to Jim. I think from a staffing, what's the name of that company we use for the third part? Yes, thank you. Does it something like this need to be ran by them with job titles, or does this fall outside of their purview since it's not really general fund kind of stuff?
I don't know that the job title will matter. It's going to be the job duties probably. But
Is that okay?
And they're going to stay the same, right?
Correct.
Thank you. I'll motion to approve as presented the title changes.
Second.
motion by Rob, a second by John Ed. I will abstain from this vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Community Crossings Grant.
Hello, Luke Maston, Highway Supervisor. We are requesting the creation of a new fund, Fund 9132, and appropriating the dollar amount that the county was awarded in the most recent Community Crossings Grant application process. for $500,867.14. This is the state contribution towards the work that will be done, and we use this fund to track those costs and reimbursements.
So that, following what you said, there's a footnote here. Wait a minute. No, wrong footnote. My fault. But this is not part of the interlocal agreement.
No.
Different item. Got it. Okay. I'd motion to approve the creation of the new fund for tracking of the receipt and tracking of the NDOT reimbursements, which would be C12 on our agenda tonight.
Second.
Motion by Rob, a second by John T. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Luke. All right, other business. First up's the Greenwood Library for an update.
Good evening.
Hi.
Cheryl Dobbs, Director of the Greenwood Public Library, and I'm here with Lou Gregory, who you appoint to my board, so thank you for that appointment. And we just have a quick PowerPoint to share what's going on at the library. I know you guys have had a long meeting already with your financial stuff first. We go through the same financial advisor, so he's fascinating, but makes your head explode sometimes. So I understand if you're ready to go home. So first, I just want to give you a quick update on last year. We had in 2020 gotten approval for a $4 million bond for the renovation of the Greenwood Library. That bond was received with no increase of taxes to taxpayers. It was a replacement bond. And this is as of the end of last year, so this is even a little outdated. We're getting really close. We were supposed to be done with our project in December. And now we're kind of hoping for June. So just the normal, delays that everyone's been experiencing the last couple of years, but we're grateful to be able to do it. So if you want to go on to the next slide. So some of the things we've addressed have been structural. As you know, where we're located, we're right between the new field house and the renovated Old City Park. And our building, we're a 105-year-old library, and our building is between 63 years old, and the newest areas are about 22 years old. So there's things all over the building that needed addressing. So we did some things to the exterior to elevate that to match the park and the field house. We also worked on our roof, worked on downspouts, drainage issues, the really exciting stuff. Go ahead to the next one. We enclosed our dumpster, so we're not so much of an eyesore as you drive by. And go on a little bit more. The other thing we address is quality of life. So we have people coming to us to do all sorts of things, business. We have families coming to us, students coming to us. And go ahead to the next slide. So we worked on a new area called the Gpl Living Room. You may not be aware that libraries all over the country really experience a lot of supervised visitations happening in our building. It's one of those things we never expected to do, as a service that we never expected to provide, but they come in every day. And these families are our community usually, and they are required to be there for a 4-hour visit, during which time they play with their children, they feed their children, they exhibit their parenting skills. And that's just, that's a tough call to be in a public space and have to feed them and those sorts of things. So we created the living room with a room that we didn't need for its original purpose. And that will have a private area, a family kind of homey environment for a small meal and a living room. They'll spend 2 hours in there maybe and go on to the rest of the library to play. You may ask, why is the public library doing that? And that's a good question. First of all, it's because it's our community and that's how they're using us. Second of all, these are families that we're able to serve who often have no reading in their family at all. They don't have books at home. They don't go to the library. That's not in their normal, regular life. And once they start coming to us every week for these appointments, we find those children are reading before kindergarten. They are coming to story time. And so we feel like we're able to serve a population we might not otherwise reach. We also are adding some interactive areas to our children's department. We've updated all our shelving, which was old and needed it. And if you go to the next slide, our collections have changed quite a bit. We got rid of the Dewey Decimal System over the last 4 years. That was quite the undertaking. But now when you come in and you want to look at World War II history books or something like that, you can go to World War II history books instead of having to translate that thought into numbers. So that's been very well received. It's still a cataloging system. It's just cataloging with words, not numbers. So that's been a huge amount of work over the last couple of years, and we're really pleased to have it done. Next slide. We are really serious about economic development. We believe that businesses come to us so that they can further their own profitability by using our space and our materials. And these are some of our new study rooms. For instance, we have had 7 study rooms upstairs for 2 to 10 people in a group, as well as our big rooms downstairs. We've expanded to 11 rooms. And as soon as we build it, they come. I mean, those don't even have doors yet. And they're generally full of people, whether it's an attorney meeting with clients, a student group, or a small business, or a person who's working out of their home and is tired from working out of their home and just wants to go to a new space. Next slide. We're also expanding our studio. I'm going to start at the bottom there. The studio is our maker space, and that was made about 4 years ago. It's been very, very popular. 3D printing, tools that you might use from a sewing machine to a Cricut to craft materials. Up in the upper left corner, you see a glow forge. That is the coolest machine that we're adding to our expanded studio, where you can engrave a wide variety of materials from plastics to metal to acrylic to leather, whatever you need to engrave. So a business, for instance, might want to make a new sign for their business, or corporate giveaways for their employees. All those things can be made at our place with our glow forge. So we're excited about that. You see a picture of the expanded studio down below. And then our business area, the hub, is going to be expanded as well, because we do have a lot of people coming to do business at the library. Next slide. And that's just some pictures from our last year. We've had a good year in 2021, and now we're halfway through 2022, and we're almost, it feels like back to normal. We're, of course, once we get done with construction, it'll feel more like back to normal. Living through a remodel while you're still in the building and open for business is not fun. It's a little bit like redoing your home and having to wash your dishes in the bathtub for a couple of weeks. Feel like we've been doing that for a long time. So we're ready to be done, but I hope you come and see us in a couple of weeks when we are done. Do you have any questions?
I did come within the last week.
Oh.
And I'll have to say, after almost 60 some years of doing this Dewey system, I was at a loss.
Yeah, the first time it might take someone to walk you through it, but it is a.
I mean, I figured it out within 30 seconds. Should look,
There you go.
go look for diets over there.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I went and looked for diets over there.
Yeah.
Your meeting room, is it going to have Zoom capability for small group meetings?
We have, there's a couple of options there. We have our big meeting rooms downstairs with digital projectors and can hook all that up. Our boardroom, our executive boardroom, where we've changed it and moved it so that it's now available to small groups, businesses, nonprofits, and it will have Zoom capability with the TV and the speakers and the whole deal. But all of our rooms can handle that. We have technology.
And when is the big room available?
Let's say July.
Okay.
And our large community room holds up to 100 people. So that one, that would be a little bit different setup. But
Oh, well, the other one, I guess, is this, how much is a smaller one hold?
smaller one holds about 10 to 15.
Okay.
It's a boardroom size, boardroom with extra tables, chairs around the edges.
You can have your classroom in there.
Yeah, well, I am planning on my 55th.
There you go.
No.
Any other questions?
Just in general, how would you characterize your relationship with the other library districts in the county?
Really good. And I should have brought that up. It's one of those things that confuses people. What do you mean the Greenwood Public Library?
Right.
We have the Johnson County Public Library. We have in our county service from edge to edge, library service. We have our own district. Johnson County has their taxing district. Our reciprocal agreement is very good. So if you have a card at your home library, you can go to any other library in the county and use it. So that, making that agreement, I think we did that in 2013 or 14. That was a big plus. And we have a great relationship with Lisa Littner and her staff. Love their new building at Clark Pleasant. It's just gorgeous. So good relationship.
Good, thank you. Judge, thank you for serving as our appointment to the board. Thank you.
It's been an honor and I've enjoyed it. As an aside, I'd say that 45 years ago, I got my first real job working in the Muncie Public Library. And seeing the transformation in Greenwood with what is going on there right now is night and day. It's like going from a Model T to a Cadillac. It's quite remarkable.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Sunoco Flexible Packaging Company, approval of resolution 22-TA-2. Whoa.
But for the record, please state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Michael Luke, Plant Manager, Sunoco Edinburgh.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. So. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of it. Yes, I do. It was at the very bottom. Yes. I got it.
So it's kind of the culmination of what started as a introduction to the company, the business, to the council a few months ago to now the pending resolution to adopt or to move forward with tax abatement, both personal property and real property. Michael, have you and your group had a chance to review the resolution and obviously you filed the forms, but are any questions on anything?
No, sir.
Sheena, you found everything to be satisfactorily completed?
Yes, I did talk to Amy earlier. We didn't require them to revise the SB1 to reflect the oxidizer being eliminated because it's not eligible, so you couldn't approve it even if you wanted to. With that, we discussed that last time, so that shouldn't be a surprise, but just want to let you know.
Okay.
It's still on SB1, but it won't be included in the abatement.
Okay, perfect. Well, I
messed up, didn't I?
No, you're fine. This is an introductory thing, and then you can open your public
Okay.
hearing.
All right. Sorry.
Oh,
That's fine.
okay. You need to.
Yeah.
Introduce something.
Okay. She gets
Just don't
giving me
move yet.
some
You still have-
instructions.
You do have to have a public hearing.
You got to open it up.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
We will convene a public hearing today, May 9th, 2022 at 6:37 PM to receive comment on County Council Resolution 22-TA-2, a resolution affirming a certain area within unincorporated Johnson County, an economic revitalization area, and qualifying certain real and personal property improvements for property tax abatements. Members of the public appearing at this hearing have a right to be heard regarding the resolution. Is anyone present this afternoon who would like to be heard? Anyone online? No. Okay, I think that's it.
With no one appearing to comment, you can close the public comment portion.
Okay. Since no one wishes to speak, we will close the public comment portion.
Now you can consider your resolution.
What?
Now you can consider the resolution.
Okay.
Do we have all the information we need to pass the resolution this evening? If that's the will of the council?
They've given us all their information.
Okay.
Well, I'll want to thank you for your commitment to the county and to growing inside the county. So thank you and your team for that. And with that, I'd recommend approval of resolution 2022-TA-2 as drafted and presented.
Second.
A motion by Rob, a second by John Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Next up is approval of Form CF1 real property for Ellipsis Greenwood Memory Care LLC.
Is there anyone online on behalf of the company? This was initially a 3-year abatement, right?
Yeah, I think this is the last year.
Last year, I believe, right? Yeah. So 31 jobs, employees. Salaries approaching 950,000 annually. Very good. Is the action here to accept the form?
Yeah, it's to approve that it's in compliance.
Okay.
Oh, so normally isn't someone here to verify the salaries and the amounts that were stated in the CF1? No?
So
How do we know that they're being upheld?
perjury.
They've signed the form.
Yeah, they sign it and certify it, but, of course, if you really want them to be present, I think we're moving 4 and 5 to next month, so it's up to you.
So the only experience that I have with these is we haven't done, this was actually the first one here in the county. Greenwood has several tax abatements and they'll read off 20 at a meeting without any representation there.
We're just simply saying that they are in substantial compliance. Unless you see something that is within the form that says they're out of compliance and would inquire as to why they're out of compliance, then it's pretty much a routine action to approve that they're in compliance. And it appears to me that they are in substantial compliance, so I would move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Ron, a second by Rob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes. Skipping items 4 and 5. Next up is first reading of ordinance 22-04, an ordinance extending the imposition of Johnson County annual license, excise tax, and wheel tax. Is this a 2-year?
5,
Oh, every 5. Wow.
yeah,
Been
it's
that
been
long.
longer than you thought.
Luke Maston, Highway Supervisor, forwarded some general information on the statute and how this revenue source works. We have historically, I think this has been renewed twice, so we've had 3 cycles so far, had a 60-month sunset in the ordinance that was desired by the original council that passed it. The ordinance that we are proposing keeps the rates at the same level that they are now. The state legislature did create the ability to raise those rates for any county that has an approved asset management plan, which we do. However, given that this revenue source is pretty unpopular, we chose to keep, as proposed, the rates as they currently are.
Was there the small trailer vehicle, was it changed? Was I reading it wrong?
It was, there are some adjustments that were made to the ordinance that's in front of you. In the state code has added some vehicle classifications or adjusted vehicle classifications. So the classifications that we used in the ordinance match the statute as it is currently.
So what is happening to my small trailer? My little bitty trailer?
So small trailers would still be paying the $25 fee.
Well, it says, I'm looking at page 2 of the ordinance and it strikes out the 15. So that's what's confusing me.
So trailers are listed both. Smaller trailers are part of the vehicle excise surtax. Larger trailers are part of the wheel tax. So the part that was struck out, the $15, the small trailers in our ordinance used to be under the wheel tax. They are being moved to the excise surtax, essentially the passenger vehicle part of those two statutes, but would still pay the same rate.
The rate's the same, that's what.
Yes.
Okay.
Further discussion?
There was in the presentation that the ordinance does not have to have a sunset time. It was up to us to decide. So that would be at this time.
Yeah. You can
If
decide that
you,
now.
yeah, if you chose to keep the sunset, that would be the council's decision, or to get rid of it.
It's written in there right now, but you
yeah.
could amend it for second reading.
And the reason to leave it unrestricted is to allow more flexibility to remove it, not increase the amounts. How often can you increase the amounts?
Any changes that are made to the ordinance, the process for those changes is outlined in the state statute. Personally, I always thought the sunset was kind of silly because the state statute already outlines the process to do away with the ordinance if we so chose, as long as we hit certain deadlines in the next year. So I think originally the hope, and I touched on this in the information I provided, I think that originally the hope was that other potential local funding options would be made available by the state legislature. We are now on the fourth version of this ordinance, and no other local funding options for road improvements have been provided in the state statute.
All right, so if we move forward with it being a 5-year sunset, we can't take action to modify or eliminate before 5 years. We hope
We can, yes.
you can.
Yeah.
But if we take that out, then we can do the same. We can change it in 3 years or 2 years or 4 years.
Really, the only advantage of the sunset is it forces you to look at it every 5 years.
The disadvantage is Sheena and I have to remember, put it on our calendars 5 years from now to come
Which
back
is
and
what we
ask
did,
for the
and here we
same
are.
ordinance that's already been approved 3 times.
Well, trying to figure out who the youngest person is on the council that might still be here in 5 years.
Yeah, I think it's John T.
Yeah, you're the youngest, yeah.
Mhm.
So my recommendation is that we have the flexibility and we remove the sunset.
I was gonna move to a different topic. Other than sunset. All right, so the introduction or conversation about the fee and understanding you're not recommending or seeking an increase to the fee, although there's the ability to do so for our situation in Johnson County that could potentially double the revenue. In light of what we're facing with infrastructure expenditures, near term, long term, I guess who came to that decision and why?
We essentially copied the ordinance and made the adjustments to the vehicle classifications, but kept the rates the same. That has, I guess, under the assumption that that would be how the council would want to proceed. I certainly have no problem with higher rates, but the issue that we've had with this revenue source is, I think I've mentioned this before, it's a somewhat regressive tax and has the potential to hurt people who are below median average income than those that are above.
They were driving a
$50,000
truck.
Yes, could be. I will take as much money for road work as you will offer, but this has not been the most popular revenue source for us. Unfortunately, it's the only statutory legal local revenue resource we have available.
I understand the commentary and would agree it could disproportionately affect some. But it seems like it kind of is a solution to some of what we're facing in maybe in lieu of a, not in lieu of an edit, but maybe in lieu of a higher edit rate versus, and then this is kind of more of a direct user, right? I mean, if you're paying it, you're using roads and so forth. Okay.
In terms of a timeline, in order for the excise surtax and the wheel tax to remain in effect at the first of the year, we have to provide the ordinance to the BMV by October 1st. So we do have to go through 2 readings since it is setting fees. But if there are any concerns or any thoughts, or you want to mull it over, we have time available to do that before we have to provide it to the state.
Is there any data to your knowledge out there that kind of tells the payers of the tax, you know, some demographics on them? Are they over the age of 40? Are they typically business owners? Is there anything out there from BMV that can maybe help us with that decision?
There isn't in terms of what they provide us when they send the collections to us, but it's something we could reach out and ask them for if they have that data available.
Well, one of the questions I have, and I certainly don't have it because I'm an empty nester, but when I drive through communities with 2-car garages with 5 cars in the driveway, you know, it makes me want to think and to pause that there would be some data that says, because it isn't the kids that are paying that excise tax or wheel tax, it's mom and dad. But if there are 5 cars or 4 cars or 3 cars per the average household, there would be some kind of data you would think that would say there are 3.2 cars or vehicles registered to a household, which wouldn't necessarily have the democratic data of what those people make. They could extrapolate that through census tract information from, you know, from our census. But wouldn't you think that BMV could say number of vehicles registered per household?
Certainly there are numbers at the national level and potentially at the state level as well. Whether the BMV has already generated those numbers on a per county basis, we would just have to ask. And if not, we'd have to ask if that's something that they could provide.
In a timely manner.
Exactly.
Because we'd have to act before they probably would provide it.
Potentially, if it's not something that they're already tracking, then there will be some effort on their part to put that together.
Do you know how our rates compare to other counties?
I don't. I don't know that there are many counties that have rates that are lower than the old maximum. I also don't know offhand if there are any counties that have chosen to raise their rates to the new available maximum if they have that approved asset management plan. But I think generally under the previous statute maximums, most counties were at or pretty close to those, which would be in line with where we have been.
Approximately, do we have more or less road miles to maintain than we did at the last time of last adoption?
Believe we have actually lost some miles
due to annexations.
But not that many. We're in the 580 or 590 range right now.
But the cost to maintain a road mile has increased or decreased?
It has most definitely increased.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, seriously, well, I mean, I'm not, don't get me, I'm not upset about someone not coming in and saying, it sounds like the discretion to deal with the rates, you know, should have been broached before just maybe the recommendation, or maybe I'm thinking of that wrong, which I apologize. I'm not picking on anybody or anything, but I think knowing that if we go to the max and not necessarily knowing what the max looks like on a per vehicle basis, like it's outlined here, knowing that we could potentially double receipts to address deficient roads. I'm not necessarily opposed to not looking at that. But if there's not enough to make that happen, then I'm fine not to waste anybody's time doing it. So it's, you know, I'm getting at.
Yeah, I wouldn't support it. Yeah. So.
But it speaks to the bigger picture that we don't support individual attempts and jabs at trying to find that source, which is one of the things that I've got on my notes for the future at the end of new business or old business and new business is, if not when are we going to discuss this? And this is one part of that bigger discussion. And I don't think we can not support a portion of it without seeing the whole. Does that make sense? Because Rob is in the process of putting together some documents, and with it as it relates to our edit expenditures and potential lit funding revenues, that for me to say I would or would not support without seeing the bigger picture and considering this as one arm of that bigger picture, that what are we going to support if we're not going to support this? And then which are we going to use of the bigger picture? So somehow we've got to get that gelled into one comprehensive presentation is my struggle. And I'm not being,
so without getting into, we've had these back and forths and we've had meetings to discuss possible avenues of funding, and we all agree that there's a whole lot of road work that needs to be done in the county, and we all agree that we've gotten here because and I'm going to stop short at placing blame, but the can's been kicked for a long time. Okay. The problem is, and I think we need to take a step back, and yes, we have probably 200,000 or 200 million plus dollars in road projects that need to be done. But realistically right now, and I support an edit, I think we need to prioritize. We're facing the steepest inflation in 3 decades. Just as Mike Reuter said, brinking on another recession. People's pocketbooks are hurting right now. I don't think it's fair for us to try to make up for this all at once on the back of taxpayers who are hurting. So I'm in favor of supporting an edit, but to try to make up for years and years of lack of progress all at once, I don't know this is the right time to do that. I think we will be stressing our taxpayers and citizens beyond their limits. So I think we need to look at what is feasible, what has to be done, and tackle that now. We can talk about kicking the can down the road, but it is what it is. This is a bad time for us to issue or pass multiple tax increases, and I'm just not going to support it. That's just my opinion.
well, I can express, and we have a commissioner out there who's raising, oh, I thought the commissioner was raising his hands to us. I guess he's just raising his hand. He's saying hallelujah or something. Anyway, he doesn't even know what he's saying. But there was some comment made at the commissioners meeting this morning about us continuing the discussions because they had some issues with, what was the name of the
Willow Lakes. Willow Lakes.
Willow Lakes. And that was part of the funding process that Luke's put together, not funding, part of the challenges of work that needs to be done. And the commissioners talked about us reinstituting the further discussion of how we're going to suggest that this funding take place, which is the bigger picture as a joint discussion, much like we're doing with ARPA funds. So that we can get it all out on the table at once, I guess. And that's what I'm looking at. That I don't know what I'll support until I hear the whole package, but everything has such a time limit. And Rob, you told us that you had, if we were to consider an edit, that there was time limits on it. If we all agreed that, and we got 4 out of 7 votes, that there was a time limit on that of how quickly we had to act. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
Over and above the debate.
Right.
And those time limits were what?
If the county wants to utilize those receipts, have those receipts beginning January 2023, I believe the ordinance has to be passed by the end of August this year.
End of August. Okay.
Approximately, maybe 1st September.
So maintaining our normal schedule, we would have to have this discussion about the bigger picture and completion of it in June and July meeting.
June,
correct?
July, and August, yeah.
And well, we've got 3 meetings if we don't do something different.
So getting back to this, is there some action that's required tonight? What would that be?
Well, what you've been asked on the agenda is to vote to approve it on first reading, and then it would come back at second reading.
And make modifications to second reading.
Or in the interim.
I mean, it keeps it moving if we pass it and approve it tonight, unmodified, and we can make modifications at second reading, but we would need to have a discussion before, well, either at the second reading or before the second reading.
So why is the timing June 11th? Is there a reason for that?
No, that's when you passed June 11th. Sorry, I gave my iPad to Luke. I think that's when we passed the last one, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2012.
I think they
So
moved the
it is-
date.
There's like a
They
sunset
have.
then?
The previous, or I guess it'd be the current version that is approved. At the time that it was approved, the statutory deadline to send it in was July 1st. So we had first reading in May, the second reading in June. This first reading does not have to pass if there's additional information that the council wants that we can potentially provide with something that we can do. I said October 1st, I believe, earlier. It's the same deadline as Rob, excuse me. The September 1st is the deadline for this. So if we're going to keep it in place in whatever form or fashion, we will have to have 2 readings. Essentially, the second one occurring by your August meeting. So there is a little bit of time if there's additional information that you require or you request, we can try to provide that. You do not have to pass the first reading tonight to stay on schedule.
So I want to say I agree with James in principle on this thing. I've read where the state put this down to the counties with the intention that they were at some point in time going to come up with an alternate funding method. And of course, we know how that goes, kind of like level 6. And so in principle, but however, we don't have that replacement right now unless we do the edit. So it is a quandary. I guess when it comes right down to it, I'd be in support of it because we don't have a replacement for that.
Well, I agree with Jim and John T down there, but my reasoning is because there's seniors out there that drive very little on our roads. They'll be picking up or doubling what they pay to drive their car once a week or somewhere like that. I still think it's a fair tax to them. The people, that drive every day.
Well, that's a
Southern
good,
Johnson County, Northern Johnson County.
and that's a good point. And with the edit, they would not have see an increase.
And their social security, correct?
Only on the social security portion of that. The income they receive from any other additional income, be it 401ks or investments, is taxed.
Correct.
Just to social security, because I investigated that.
Correct.
And I corrected myself and told Rob I was wrong.
Each or further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in just, I think it's important that the questions that Luke raised for the BMV, that we get those answers. I too agree with Jim and the two Johns. However, it would be nice to see get those questions answered. You know, I wouldn't take off the table the what are we looking at, the wheel tax. But you know, I'd like to find out, get the answers to those questions. And it doesn't really matter if we vote yes or vote no today. We're just pushing the vote to the next month anyway, so.
Well said. With that, I'd entertain a motion to move this forward.
I'll make the motion and move it forward. I'd like to know what the questions exactly are. I know I have a question that I said about how many vehicles per household, but what are the other questions?
My questions were generally just what data is available to help us make a decision of how many seniors are registered, you know, here, and then you're kind of making some assumptions that because they're seniors, they don't drive a lot, which right or wrong, it is what it is, but it's how many, if possible, how many buses, how many RVs, how many semi-trailers, how many tractors, how many trailers of over 12,000 pounds declared, you know, start getting some data that ties to these numbers. And if there's other data such as registrations per household or average age of household or anything like that, that's, to me, the more the better to look at, talk about.
I agree.
I'd just like to know what the other counties comparable, are we at the same rate? Are we way low?
Pete, do you have any questions that you'd like answered?
No, I don't. Just the ones that Rob covered, the ones that he and Luke kicked back and forth earlier, and I think those are great. And I'm going to need to go after this vote.
I'll second Ron's motion.
Got a motion by Ron, a second by Rob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Old and new business.
Interlocal
We have one
agreement.
more item.
Do we have another one?
Interlocal agreement.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Can't get rid of me that easy.
Sorry, Luke. Approval of interlocal agreement with the city of Greenwood regarding replacement of culvert WR-097, New Bridge 620.
The city of Greenwood has a stormwater project planned in the area of Honey Creek Road. And part of that project would result in replacing an existing culvert that is under the county's jurisdiction under the Cumulative Bridge Fund, upsizing that structure to a new bridge, which the cutoff is 20 feet or longer on the span. City of Greenwood would be paying for the project. County Highway Department has reviewed the plans and our comments have been addressed. This interlocal agreement, assuming that any issues that we find during or after construction on the final inspection are addressed, would result in the county taking that bridge into our inventory under that cumulative bridge fund.
Maybe a question more for Lou. How does this fall into council jurisdiction?
Statutorily, every interlocal has to come here unless we go to the AG.
Have the commissioners weighed in on this?
Yeah, they voted to approve it today.
Thank you. What's the advantage to do this? I'm sorry.
So the driving factor for the replacement of the structure is not its current condition. It's just the function that it serves in the overall stormwater project that the city of Greenwood is pursuing. So they will be improving that ditch. The existing structure most likely is undersized, if I had to guess, but definitely will be once the ditch work is done. So that necessitates the need for it to be upsized to a bridge. But again, the city of Greenwood is responsible for paying the construction costs. And then assuming that it's built to our satisfaction and to what we had approved, then we would take over future maintenance with the cumulative bridge funds.
Has this been through the county surveyor?
I don't think that is a legal drain. I'm not sure. We'd have to check. If it had been, or if it was required, that is something, that's a review step in the
It
plan.
says over the
development
LW
phase.
Jones regulated drain.
Okay. That would, the city of Greenwood, as a part of their process in designing the project, would have had to reach out then to the county surveyor if that is a legal drain for review and approval of the proposed project.
So if the city were to not pursue the interlocal agreement and they just did this and built the bridge, wouldn't the county still be responsible for?
Technically, yes, as long as we have the cumulative bridge fund.
Okay.
So the goal of the interlocal and our bridge and culvert acceptance policy is to hopefully avoid that situation.
Right.
Where we're brought in from the beginning, have input from the beginning, since we will ultimately be the ones that are responsible for it.
So this is really just a formality though.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Seeing no further discussion, I would just, as an approval of interlocal agreement with City of Greenwood regarding replacement of culvert WR 0987, new bridge 620 for approval. Second.
Well, commissioners approved it pending legal. The version that you have that's redlined, that's the changes that Luke and I have made that have not yet been accepted by the city of Greenwood. So if you want to approve it pending the resolution of those issues with Greenwood, then that would probably be good.
Adding what she just said pending.
Second that. I did. All right. Motion by Ron, a second by John. Ed, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Now, old and new business.
I consider this new business. Just wanted to bring to the attention, and I had Amy send it to you. We are moving ahead at a slightly faster rate this year on the budget, with Mike making his presentation this evening, which means there's an opportunity for us to move sooner on our budget guidelines. It wasn't until July 14th of 2021 that we made decisions concerning guidelines for department heads and elected officials. And I would like to suggest, since you received copies of these, that we put this on our agenda for the next meeting in June. And we'd be prepared to discuss it in June, not wait till July, which gives everybody a little more breathing room. Is there any objection to moving a little? Not a problem with you, is it, Amy? I mean, it's to your advantage that we get the information out quicker.
So I'm sorry, you're requesting that we move budget guideline discussions to June.
Have them June instead of
Yeah.
July, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem.
Just guidelines.
Yeah, I know it's guidelines, yeah.
It benefits Amy, right?
Yeah.
It benefits
I don't
them.
think we need a motion on that, do we?
Well, we have to put it on the agenda,
Can you put that on the agenda? It's on the agenda.
and the agenda is controlled by the president. So.
Here we go. All right.
And then the second item was what I was alluding to with Rob's discussion that has been alluded to by the commissioners. And that's when we're going to have a discussion about the edit possibilities. And Rob, you were working on some additional paperwork or something, if I recall.
So following up to the last conversation, you may have been at our special meeting, I can't recall, where there were some scenarios played out involving an edit at a certain rate, moving jail expenditures and so forth. One of the scenarios Jim asked me to run was to look at moving half of the jail expenditures from appropriating one half of jail expenditures from the general fund into the criminal justice jail lit. Another scenario was Faux Bolton, moving all of those over there. And then this edit rate was at 0.2, which I think was another number suggested by a council member at that meeting. So concisely, what this is, front and back, A and B, the bottom two boxes are the same for each illustration. The middle box, it says criminal justice lit remains at the 0.2. That's the current rate, right? So this, and then the bottom is if the rate is reduced by a future council after the debt is retired. And then all that happens here is you go above, I'm going to look at scenario A, where this appropriation is one half of the jail expenditures. And I sourced the jail expenditure number from the 2022 budget. And then I assumed a 3% increase. So basically half of that and then 3% annually increase thereafter, kind of line it up with Mr. Reuter's assumptions. So if half of it's coming from general fund, that means half is coming from the jail lit. So if you go down to the jail lit boxes, you can see the impact to the ending cash balances in the jail lit. More importantly, in the scenario for A, you'll see that if we follow, and the timeline is certainly available for conversation, but the Smith Valley Road project, this is with zero relinquishment dollars, would there be a shortfall in funds available until a future point in time. So the funding of Smith Valley Road could be altered, it could be amended somehow, but in that scenario, with dollars going out in those fiscal years, just moving half of the jail expenditures doesn't accomplish Smith Valley by 2028 or 2027. It would be delayed really to about 2029. Page B, or next page, flipping over, same exact scenario, except 100% of jail expenditures get appropriated from the criminal justice lit. You can see that remaining dollars for Smith Valley and capital projects are sufficient. And I say other capital needs, those have been talked about in handouts presented from our highway director. And then you can see the impact to the lit, this criminal justice lit, if to the cash balance is there, assuming 100% of jail expenditures are now being funded out of that. Something that Mike shared with us in our call, I believe, is the sunset. We thought we had initially a 20-year sunset on that. It's actually a 22-year sunset on criminal justice. So there was some change in state statute that allows us to extend that. I can't tell you exactly the statute. That might be a question more for Mike, but my scenarios don't go out that far. My illustrations don't. So those were the two numbers, the 0.2% edit and a 1/2 versus full that I was specifically asked to illustrate. That's what these are. We can do any number of illustrations here. And then I would certainly want Luke and Highway to chime in since there are no relinquishment dollars, if the timing of local dollars, our dollars, gets moved forward, backwards, what kind of latitude there is there to accomplish the Smith Valley Road improvement.
First of all, thank you, Rob, for
Yeah.
taking the time to do all of that. I know you put a lot of effort and time into this. And I know I appreciate it. I think everyone else does too.
Yes, sir.
I think it's probably safe to say, realistically, we're not going to put all the jail funds into this project, but I think it is pretty feasible to go with the 1/2 and just modify the edit percentage increase.
There's that, Jim, and there's also what you heard today from Mike is that the county's in a strong financial condition. So our cash position is strong. So while in here, in this illustration, I assume an appropriation of $3 million out of the rainy day fund, that could potentially be a little more. We could also use a little bit more out of the general fund potentially, if so chose, not just simply because the jail expenditure is relieving the general fund, but because of the strength of the current cash position.
Rob, do you know, can we raise the edit by, could we raise it? Do we have to raise it in increments of 0.1%, or can we do like would raise it to 0.25?
I think that there is a minimum decimal, right, that you can go out. I think if you stay in eighths, like 0.125, which would then go to a quarter, then go to, yeah, I think that we're covered. We can, or I can ask Mike Reuter that, or Jeff Peters that as well.
Okay.
Now, does this include the additional expenditures for community corrections?
No. So focusing on that, if you wanted to stay on the scenario A or the page A, illustration A, and you want to work with the assumption that there will not be a reduction of the criminal justice lit rate into the future, then you can see the ending cash balance continues to grow at a pace that, in my opinion, would facilitate the construction of a community corrections facility and continued operations thereof, not only that potential facility, plus portions of the jail expenditures.
Which in the campus proposal is a cost that we would be incurring. The least I've expected that the source of funding for that would be from the surplus of lit or jail lit.
Yeah, Ron, I mean, over the course of the next 9 years, you'd have an ending cash balance of about $54 million that you could use for those projects.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
He didn't include it in the other computation. You took it out.
No, I'm trying not to, obviously the potential use of criminal justice lit dollars varies or not varies, it's limited, it's more restrictive than say what edit dollars could be used for. So I just simply refer to those as other capital needs up there, and then ending cash balance and others, after my time here will determine what those appropriate uses or projects would be.
And I think it's, it's a reasonable source. I was shocked to learn that the distribution, we take the heat, but the distribution goes to the other communities. So the Greenwood and Whiteland, New Whiteland are all going to benefit from the action we take.
Yeah, it would be, excuse me, it'd be my hope that at least we could work together on infrastructure, right? I mean, it's not for me or us to say what the city of Franklin or Greenwood or whoever should do that, but if we're looking our taxpayer constituents, income earners that reside in the county in the eye and say we want to use this primarily for infrastructure, then I would hope that those other cities and towns would do the same, but it's beyond our scope or control.
This action doesn't obligate them to use it for roadway infrastructure. It's a pool.
Yeah, it's whatever edit would be appropriate uses for edit would trickle down to them.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you looked at, I can see Rob's little numbers wheel turning.
It's tiny.
So when you were looking at wheel tax, did you have some thoughtful computation of this assumes this plus that?
Well, so what was, excuse me, yeah, what was interesting that if the number is potentially doubled, right? So, and that number was 1.7 million, so it could potentially go to 3.4 million. And if you look at it, at a 0.2% rate, it's 3.9. So you could almost pick up another 1.7 over here and reduce this number by half. And get to a similar place at the end of the day, if that makes sense.
But isn't it a matter, I don't know when we want to get into this discussion, but it is a matter of philosophy of how we look for our community to bear some of the burden. And one way, I understand, Rob, what you're saying is that the wheel tax is something that when everybody jumps in their vehicle, whether they're 16 years old or they're 82 years old, I'm gonna tell you I know one commissioner that drives this county back and forth for pickleball. I wouldn't say his name, but he puts a lot of miles on his vehicle, you know, and I do too. And, you know, it's a matter of how is it imposed? Is it imposed with a very large thing that we see once a year when we go to the pay our BMV visit? Or is it something that we do once a year when we file our taxes, you know, and that's all very personal for all of us of how do we, you know.
Yeah, I don't know how we arrive at, I agree, it's very personal, and I think we've heard at least 2 or 3 opinions on that tonight, and conceptually, I feel like if you're a user of in this case, our roads, then you probably should have more skin in the game in maintaining those roads, or at least the financial obligation to maintain the roads. That's certainly one perception. I'm not saying I'm there yet. I'd like to see that data that we were potentially or hoping to get before that. We might all be very surprised as to the number of households over the age of 65 that are registered and pay. I have no idea. So, but yeah, you're right. It's going to come down to each of our philosophical beliefs on that.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I want, you said it'd end up at 54 million on the gel.
Yeah.
If that rate is reduced down to 0.10 at the end,
Well, why would we reduce it?
that's what we said we'd do when we passed it.
In fairness, is a non-binding
Right.
resolution, and I will be here at that meeting to possibly advocate for that, but that's neither here nor there. We can't bind them. So.
Right, but it would reduce it down to 18 million.
Yeah, through that point. Now, keep in mind that sunset still continues on
Right.
out beyond 2031, but so the number would in theory go up. But yes, you're right.
John, I don't know that we voted on it. Did we vote on it?
It's a non-binding.
It's sort of like our salary guidelines.
Just like everything else, circumstances,
Well,
circumstances change.
Well, what I'd like to say is, you know, and I've said this 100 times, I know. When we collect a tax dollar for a specific use like criminal justice, we should use it for criminal justice. And I believe that we should, you know, the projects that have been put on hold and put on the back burner and forgotten, like community corrections and some other things that we want to do with ARPA funding, need to be done with that criminal justice there.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think we need to take care of that first before we make any assumptions as to what we're going to do with what's remaining, because we really don't know what those numbers are either.
And I think it's important to say, at least as I recall the statute and the notes, it's correctional and rehabilitation facilities.
Thank you.
And so we tend to focus on the correctional aspect of it, but the rehabilitational facility, that could really, pending legal review and opinion, that might be broadly determined to be mental health rehabilitation, you know, for example. So, you know, that could be a very strong play. Could be.
Or probation.
Yeah, it could be.
So given that, I think you've done well, Rob, to show us the way here.
Well, thank you. I think there's at least a foundation for discussion from a numbers perspective. We'll get I'll reach out to Kevin and Luke and get some fine tuning on the Smith Valley piece of it. And then make sure the numbers still work with Mike Reuter and others.
Well, the other thing about the Smith Valley thing, we're looking at that thing like $50 million on X date. Well, projects don't get billed like that.
Right.
You have design and then you have startup. And, there's a cash flow to this that's going to push out. There's going to be right-of-way acquisitions and all kinds of things that are going to push this thing out. So what we need to do is look at this more intelligently on this Smith Valley Road thing.
Yeah.
Also.
Agreed. The funding timeline you see here of 20, you see dollars going out in 2022, 2025, 26 and 27. Excuse me, those were based off, and I was confused looking up calendar year versus fiscal year, but those were programming years, programming dollars from NDOT. So if this becomes a 100% local project, then we do gain, I think, more control over that timeline.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, you said you weren't going to be here in June,
I will not be here at the June meeting.
and I would find it a challenge, at least at the say the least, to have this discussion without you present.
Well, you should have a lot of discussions without me.
Well, we will in 6 months. But but I mean, but for this discussion, I think the author, you do such a thorough and complete, you can twist those numbers in your head as opposed to, some of our bald heads move a little slower than that. But,
I'll help in any way. I think there's a foundation though built that really anybody could kind of pick it up and work, but yeah.
Their motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Rob, second by John Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.